What is the perfect setup for asset protection and privacy with your real estate? That's what we're talking about today on the Sub2Deals Show. Hey, Sub2ers. Welcome to the Sub2Deals Show, where we talk about all things subject to and creative finance. And occasionally we'll talk about other real estate investing topics, but it's always something to help you with your real estate investing business. It is cold in Arkansas. I'm telling you, for the last few days, it has been lows in the 20s, highs in the 40s, man. It's really unusual here. We're trying to stay warm. And we're talking about protecting your assets today. Use of trust, use of LLCs, or 1,000 different opinions on that. What we're going to talk about today is what I've done for the past, probably 23, 24 years. You know, I've told the story many times. When I first got started, I didn't know what to do, so I just did something. And I took title to the first several houses that I bought in my own name. Now, today, we know that's probably not a good idea. Interestingly enough, nothing ever happened to me when I did that. And I'll tell you, in the last 25 years, I've met thousands and thousands of investors. And a lot of the old time guys, before everyone knew about trust, before LLCs were a thing or anything else, man, they just owned hundreds of houses in their own name. Now, for a lot of those people, it was okay. Nothing ever really happened to them. But we know now that it's probably really dangerous to do that. Why? Well, let's say that you're a really successful buy and hold investor and you buy 200 houses over the next 10 or 15 years for retirement purposes. And you own all of those in your own name. Now, let's say you have some kind of accident, something happens. Maybe it's a frivolous lawsuit. Maybe somebody slips and falls on one of your properties and you get sued. Well, what's the first thing that happens? All your properties probably get lis pendens filed against them. You can't sell them. You can't refinance them. You can't access any money, anything that you need to do while that lawsuit's going on. Every single property that you've got is tied up in litigation. Now, so LLCs, are they the solution to that? Well, could be, but what if you put every property that you own into one LLC? Same problem. Somebody sues that LLC, all your properties are tied up. So we're going to talk today about the structure that we use with our properties. Now, you guys have heard me talk a lot about trust over the years. I think they're amazing. They need to be used properly, but they're cheap. They're free, basically. And they're just great for privacy purposes. Now, trusts themselves don't provide asset protection beyond the anonymity factor, which is a big part of asset protection. If they don't know you own the house, then chances are they can't get to you to sue you. Of course, they can, but sometimes just presenting obstacles, especially toward frivolous lawsuits, that is a big step toward asset protection. And we did a video here a few weeks ago about comparing trust to LLCs. And I can never get this straight. I think there's going to be a pop-up somewhere here, probably right here, that's going to tell you where to find that, comparing trust to LLCs, what the differences are, why one might be superior to another in actually holding title to property. But that's another story. Today, we're talking about our structure and how many properties per LLC you should have. And there are no rules on this, but this is what you need to remember. Everything held in one entity, whether that's your name, whether you're the entity and you have 100 houses in your name, or whether you have 100 houses in an LLC, all of those properties are bundled together and they're all at risk. Okay. If that LLC gets sued, it gives you asset protection, but everything in that LLC is subject to that lawsuit. So let's say that you have 100 houses and they're all free and clear and your portfolio is worth $20 million and somebody's suing you for $50,000. You tie up everything that you got while that lawsuit's going on. You can't conduct business. Our rule of thumb for years has been $250,000 in equity per LLC. That's my risk tolerance. Okay, I don't know what yours is, and this is kind of how that worked. Let's say, for example, that I'm a new investor and I'm just starting out, and I determine that $250,000 of risk is all that I want to risk of my wealth at any given time. So this is what I'll do. I'll form my first LLC to hold property. My first house that I buy, let's say that I buy it subject to, it's worth $250. I take over the payments at $200. I've got $50,000 in equity in that property, and it goes into LLC number one. Now, my next property that I buy, it's a home run. It's a $200,000 house that I get for $100,000. I've got $100,000 in equity, and I'm sticking that one in there with my first property, LLC number one. Now I've got two properties in this. One has 50,000 in equity, one has 100. So I buy two subsequent properties, each with 50,000 in equity. They both go into LLC one. Now, I'm capped there at my 250 in equity, my 250 in risk. Okay. So I form a second LLC in anticipation of property number five. So that way, LLC number one has four properties in it, but they total $250,000 in equity. Okay, so I buy my fifth property, and maybe it was just an unbelievable, amazing deal, and it has $250,000 in equity. I'm going to stick it in LLC number two, and then I'm forming LLC number three. LLC number one has four properties. LLC number two only has one, but each LLC carries $250,000 of wealth, of my money, of my equity in it. And then I'll go on along that way. Now, let's say that I sell one of the properties out of LLC one and I free up some equity space. The next property that I buy may get stuck in LLC number one. I know that can be a little bit confusing, especially for you people listening to this without a diagram, but that's how I've operated for years. It's not the number of properties in the LLC. It's actually the amount of equity and the amount of equity that you're comfortable risking. You may be a multi-millionaire. Maybe your risk tolerance is $500,000. You could put a lot more properties in your LLC. Maybe you do commercial property, okay, where each property that you buy has a tremendous amount of equity. You may want a structure that's a little bit different. You may not even use LLCs. You may use partnerships or corporations. Again, we're just talking about what we do in our business. A smaller investor buying 10, 15 houses a year, and how we structure things and move things around. Doing it this way, you don't have to have 500 LLCs. I've heard investors that purchase an LLC for every property. And in some states, that's very affordable. And if that's what you want to do and you want to keep up with all that paperwork and do those things, you certainly can. But in my experience, that's not the best way to do it. It's just not necessary. Depending on how often you turn properties, you may find that you only at any given time are operating 5 or 6 LLCs. Things are a lot simpler. Remember, we like to keep things very simple. Most investors are never going to be, I buy 200 houses a year. I think most people want to find financial freedom, and you can totally do that with 10 or 15 houses a year. Well-selected houses now. I'm not talking about some of these stupid deals people make. Well-chosen deals. Never be a motivated buyer. But hopefully that'll answer the question, how many properties per LLC? It's not about the number of properties. It's about how much equity, how much of your wealth are you comfortable with risking? But that's what we do. So hope you guys are having a great week. Get out there, talk to some sellers, buy some houses.